Welcome back, everyone, to Tales by the Fire. This week we have another story installment. We will continue The Champion's Quiet and explore Chapter 8. Please sit back and relax. If you enjoy the tale, please hit the like and the subscribe buttons. Feel free to ring the bell to inform you of new content and express your thoughts by leaving a comment below. As always, your presence is welcome and appreciated. The Champion's Quiet, Chapter 8. Scene 1. The faint glow of the figure's eyes cut through the lingering mist, casting an unnatural hue over the forest path. Silent and unmoving, the figure stood like a jagged tear in the fabric of the world. It wore a hooded cloak that shifted unnaturally, ripples running down the fabric despite the still air. Its long, clawed hands hung limply at its sides, but those sharp, glowing eyes were fixed on them, on Thurston. Hovner's arm shot out, a silent command of steel as he braced against their instinct to move. His stance, wide and immovable, radiated the weight of his experience. "Do not move," he said in a voice low and tight as a bowstring, the sharp edges of his tone making it clear. This was a line they could not cross. Thurston's hands closed around his staff, his palms damp with nerves. The wood hummed faintly beneath his grip, vibrating with an energy that felt alive, thrumming to a rhythm he still couldn't fully comprehend. His voice was barely above a whisper when he asked, "What is that thing?" "A Banewalker," Hovner murmured, his gaze locked on the figure. The words left his mouth like a curse. "A remnant of the king's power. I'd hoped they'd faded after his fall."
Well, that's unfortunate.
Dulin muttered, shrinking behind Thurston as much as his mismatched, colorful outfit would allow.
Because this one looks rather vibrant to me.
At the sound of Dulin's voice, the figure tilted its head slightly, its glowing eyes narrowing. The motion made the hair rise on Thurston's arms. The Banewalker shifted forward, and though its movements were deliberate, every joint seemed too fluid. Horror movie fluid. Then it moved, drifting forward with a glide that disturbed nothing beneath it. The Banewalker didn't walk. It slid through the world like frost creeping across glass. No rustle of leaves, no breath of displaced air. Its hollow presence pulled at the edges of reality, bending what should be, what was comfortable and known. When it spoke, the voice rose from beneath its hood, cold and alien. It wasn't just sound. It pressed against their chests, heavy and sharp.
"You carry something that does not belong in this world."
Thurston felt the breath leave his lungs. The chill of its words smothered him like the pre-dawn before the storm, the weight of dread pressing into his ribs. The long claws of certainty told him the voice meant him. His hands gripped the staff tighter, and he felt its energy respond, a pulse of defiance matching the racing of his heart. Barely able to speak through the tightness in his throat, he whispered, "It's talking about this, isn't it?" He asked Hovner under his breath. "No," Hovner said grimly, his voice a hard edge against the Banewalker's pull. He took a cautious step forward, shielding Thurston and Dulin with his unyielding frame. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword, though he didn't draw it, and he never took his eyes off the figure. "It thinks so, but it's you he senses, and that means it has no intention of letting us leave." The Banewalker moved again, slower this time, its steps gliding without disturbing the earth below it. The unnatural grace set every nerve in Thurston's body alight, but still it said nothing more. Instead, the weight of its presence pressed down on them, an invisible force that seemed to suck the air from the clearing. Then it raised its arm, one long talon-like finger pointing directly at Thurston.
"You are not meant to walk this path, abandon this quest, or face the destiny of the damned."
Its voice reverberated unnaturally, the rhythm of its words striking some primal chord in Thurston's chest. Before he even knew what he was doing, he started to take a step back. It wasn't after all the worst advice he had ever received. "Do not run!" Hovner hissed, his fingers flexing over his blade. Though the words were whispered, they landed with iron precision. His back straightened, his calm authority cutting through Thurston's panic. "Stand tall. It thrives on the weak. It doesn't fight unless provoked." Fighting every instinct in his body, Thurston rooted his legs and forced his mind to focus. He wasn't sure what the Banewalker would do, but something innate told him that turning his back might be worse than any fight.
"Hovner,"
Thurston said, struggling to keep his voice steady.
"Now would be a great time to explain why this thing exists."
Instead of answering immediately, Hovner stepped forward, putting himself between Thurston and the Banewalker. His hand rested on his sword, but he didn't draw it. Instead, he spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You have no dominion here, Banewalker. Your master is dead. Whatever instructions you follow are relics of a power that no longer exists." The Banewalker cocked its hooded head again.
Do you think death erases that power? It merely changes who holds it. Do you believe your contract is now void, elf?
Before Hovner could reply, the air around them shifted sharply. A sudden, undeniable pulse of energy rippled out from the figure, passing through the group like a cold, windless wave. It bore the unmistakable feel of something otherworldly, something wrong.
I can taste the power that occupies this space. All is not as it appears. Oh, how I savor deception. You elf, you should know better. We have much to discuss. This is not over. Ha 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 ha.
What seemed to be laughter came from beneath the hood of the cloak.
Stirrings in the west are calling me, my pointy-eared comrade. We must save this for another day.
"We are not comrades." And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the Banewalker turned and melted into the shadows. One moment its cloaked form filled their vision, and the next it was simply gone. All that remained was the faint hum of its lingering energy, like a distant echo of a storm. Thurston exhaled the breath he hadn't realized he was holding.
"What just happened?"
"It left," Hovner said shortly, though his hand didn't stray far from his blade. His brow furrowed deeply as he scanned the forest for any sign of movement. "But not out of fear. It accomplished what it came to do."
"And what exactly was that?"
Thurston demanded. "To deliver a message," Hovner replied, though his voice lacked certainty.
A confusing and terrifying one.
Dulin chimed in, stepping forward and brushing dirt off his clothes as if the encounter had merely been an inconvenience.
I don't know about you two, but I vote we be somewhere far, far away from here immediately. I don't believe I want any more shadowy figures of doom speaking with me today.
"I'll second that motion, and I am in agreement with the shadowy figure sentiment,"
Thurston murmured. Scene 2. The group didn't speak again until they'd moved several paces away from where the Banewalker had stood. Even Dulin, usually irreverent and chatty, was unusually quiet, his bright eyes darting nervously between the shadows of the woods. Eventually, Thurston couldn't stay silent any longer.
"Hovner,"
he said, his tone firm.
"I get that these Banewalkers are bad news, very scary, but what are they really?"
Hovner sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly under the weight of the question. "They are an extension of the king's power. After he conquered the world, he needed a way to enforce his law and quell dissent. That is when the Banewalkers appeared, seemingly from nowhere. Their very presence was enough to turn most opposition into submission. They were the quote-unquote peacekeepers before the elves joined the king. After that, they were used for particularly messy tasks. They were feared more than the Dark Elves."
"They're not natural, then?"
Thurston asked. "Nothing about them is natural," Hovner replied grimly. "Some believe they aren't even of this world, but rather a creation brought here through dark means."
"Dark means?" Thurston repeated.
An artifact.
Dulin interjected, his voice unusually subdued for all its usual loftiness.
It's been whispered about for centuries now. The king supposedly wielded an object not of this realm, something that gave him the power to crush entire kingdoms without army or mercy.
Hovner nodded tersely. The artifact I told you about. Well, the Banewalkers are said to be tied to that artifact. Creations bound by its magic and will. He glanced at Thurston, his expression darkening. And now they believe your staff is of interest. They believe it is from another realm, but it is not. The Banewalker's interpretation of your staff tells me that you and the staff are tied to each other. The Walker was definitely sensing you as the foreign magic, but again thought it to be your staff. Thurston gripped the weapon tightly, unsure whether to feel fear or defiance. He cast a glance at Dulin.
Great. I have my own version of the ruby slippers. And one munchkin. Ever hear of anything else crossing between realms? Or is it just this artifact thing?
Well,
Dulin drawled, kicking a rock down the path as they walked.
nothing's definitive, but stories float around about peculiar people and objects popping up where they shouldn't. Valuables, creatures, even the occasional building. But until now, I didn't think there was much truth to any of it.
This lent confirmation of the stories Hovner had told during his rants on magic, balance, and headaches.
What is the artifact?
Thurston asked. The Fae shrugged, his crooked grin returning faintly. I don't believe anybody knows. There are few alive who would know. The king trusted very few, said Hovner. I fear before all of this is said and done, we are going to have to find out, though. Scene 3. Night fell earlier than expected, the dense canopy of the forest swallowing the last light of the day. The group settled into a small clearing, a hastily assembled fire casting flickering shadows across their faces. Hovner sat with his blade balanced against his knees, staring deeply into the flames. His silence, though common, felt heavier than usual. Thurston watched him for a moment before breaking the quiet.
You know about Valyra, don't you?
Thurston said. Not a question, but a statement. Hovner didn't look away from the flames as he answered. Everyone knows of Valyra. She was one of the last to fall when the king crushed the world under his boot.
And you?
Thurston pressed. She is a figure of value to my people, Hovner replied carefully as though weighing each word. The Fae are old, but their kind marked a particular power in our history, a respected one. Some believe, many believe that we elves were created by the Fae. As we are the stewards of balance, it is believed we came into existence by the work of the Fae. Across the fire, Dulin nodded solemnly, for once shedding his usual jovial demeanor.
She was our queen. Valyra was one of the last rulers to fall. We Fae do not yield easily, not even to overwhelming force. She fought to keep her throne. She and her people resisted for far longer than most. But the king's might, it was absolute.
He said simply and unusually seriously, though there was a softness in his voice Thurston hadn't heard before. Dulin sighed, shaking his head.
She fought as hard for us as we did for her. But the Fae, like so many races, are scattered.
Dulin continued.
We are not what we once were. She has a lot of work ahead of her if she wants to rally the Fae. We are small and hidden.
I know she is here to reclaim her throne and lead her people again,
Thurston said firmly.
She told me as much before we were separated.
Hovner and Dulin exchanged a glance, unspoken understanding passing between them before Hovner replied. Yes. Dulin perked up.
Oh, don't fret, big guy. Stick with me, and I'll keep you on the path to Queen Valyra. Ominous shadows cannot contend with my wit and charm.
Thurston rolled his eyes but couldn't help the small smile that tugged at his lips. The Fae's relentless cheer was foolish and exhausting, but it was also somehow inspirational. Hovner remained silent, his brow furrowed in thought. Though they'd been traveling together for only a short time, Thurston was beginning to understand the elf's silences. They weren't brooding, they were calculating. Finally, Hovner spoke. "If we find her, Thurston," he began carefully, "know that the world she seeks to rebuild will not just simply come into alignment."
I know, Thurston replied, but that doesn't change what I feel. I owe her everything. I will stand by her helping make it happen, or die in the process.
Hovner turned his sharp gaze on him, studying him as if searching for a crack in his resolve. Finding none, he nodded. "But whether the world lets her is another matter entirely," Hovner said to himself. Thurston leaned back against the log, staring up at the stars peeking through the canopy. The weight of everything pressed down on him, but through it all, one thought remained constant. Valera was close, and so was everything that wanted to stop her. And hopefully, so was he.